often dealing with the symptoms of our problems and not the real problem. And sometimes we wonder why, instead of solving the real problem, we go from one issue to the other. That's what happens when we focus so much on our specific OCD theme. And I'm not saying it's not important to acknowledge that your OCD perhaps is more active in one theme than the other. What I am, however, saying is that it can be unhelpful to think that you have ROCD or HOCD instead of understanding the disorder which we suffer from, which is called OCD, which is the obsessive and compulsive disorder. Friends, even though we all have different themes, the disorder is still the same, and so is the treatment for it, which is called ERP, which stands for Exposure and Response Prevention. So today, in this episode, we're going to be looking at what's the real problem and not just its symptoms. I often share a story of, which is a real story, by the way. So my older sister, she suffered from severe headache for years and years and years, severe headache. And the doctors would prescribe, normal painkillers. But one day, after so many different painkillers and so many different types of medication, a specific doctor paid attention to her problem. And what he said to my sister was, "Tati, your headache continues to come back no matter how many painkillers we give you. Perhaps it's now time to find out what's causing the headache in the first place. So instead of just giving you painkillers, your headache issue goes away completely." And this is what he did. They run so many different tests and exams to find out what was causing the headache. And they have found that caffeine was causing her severe headache. And once she cut off caffeine, her headache was gone and she was no longer in need to be taking painkillers on a daily basis. And I believe that happens to us suffering from OCD. We are often addressing the symptoms of our problems instead of looking at the real problem. If you've been watching my podcast for a while now, you will know that I often say that OCD is just alive because of the way we deal with it. OCD is like a car. It can only function by having fuel, by having gasoline or petrol. And what keeps OCD alive and well is not OCD itself, but our approach to it. Is the compulsions, is the checking, the repeating ourselves, the double checking the door lock, or asking for reassurance, or rumination, and on and on and on, depending on your type, on your theme of OCD. But what I would like to discuss in today's video is the fact that the real problem is not really the compulsions. The real problem that we want to look at is why we act on those compulsions. What's behind it? What are we trying to do when we act on compulsions? And by understanding that, looking at it and addressing it, we are at a much more likelihood and a much higher chance of beating OCD and living a full, free life, which you deserve. Friends, what we suffer with in obsessive and compulsive disorder, the intrusive thoughts, the anxiety, it's not unique to OCD sufferers. All my family members, they don't struggle with OCD, but they do have intrusive thoughts. They do have anxiety. They also feel overwhelmed when life hits them. They also have every now and again thoughts that they don't want to have. But the difference is how they deal with it to the way that I used to deal with it when I was suffering from OCD before I found full recovery. So normal people, they have an intrusive thought and they don't attach meaning to it. They don't give it far more importance than it deserves. They simply acknowledge that they had a thought and they let it go. They get on with their lives. OCD sufferers, they have an intrusive thought and they give it meaning, they give it thought, and they think about it, and they ruminate on it, and they start attaching value to the thought. They start doubting and asking if they are good people or not because of the fault that they had. And they start Googling and finding out online what does that fault mean about them and their character. And that's the danger, and that's what makes OCD sufferers struggle and normal people not struggle because of intrusive thoughts. One of the things that was so important for me to understand as an OCD sufferer seeking recovery when I was on my beginning of my process was that OCD is the doubting disorder. No matter what conclusion I believed I would come in, I finally believed that I closed the door, or I finally believed that my partner was the right one for me, or I finally believed that I was sure about this one thing. No matter what conclusion I believed I came up with, OCD would drop that famous question one more time. Hey Raff, but what if? And then I would act on those compulsions all the time. What is behind it is that Raff needed 100% certainty. I wanted to know for sure that my partner was the right one. I wanted to know for sure that that door was locked. Or I wanted to know for sure that that thought didn't really dictate who I was as a person. So I wanted to have a certainty that does not exist. So there was an element of control within me, that there was something about me that was not okay with being uncomfortable. There was something about me that was not okay with accepting uncertainty. And the problem, friends, is we live in a very uncertain world. As I record this video right now as I speak, I don't know if I will be here towards the evening. I don't know if I'm going to be alive tomorrow or not. And we get on with our lives and we accept the uncertainty. So if we accept an uncertainty with something so huge as our own lives, why don't we accept uncertainty about the door not being locked or not? About our partners perhaps not being right or not? And one of the things that I was taught by my specialist OCD therapist that guided me in my recovery process was to accept uncertainty. He said, you've got to let go of the illusion that you will have 100% certainty in life, because you will not. So every time I would have a thought, like if it was all OCD and the thought was, hey, are you sure your partner was the right one? Instead of Googling, asking her some questions to check her character or ruminating, I would say to my OCD, yeah, maybe she is, maybe she isn't. Yeah, maybe, maybe not. Or if my OCD say to me, hey, are you sure you locked the door? Instead of saying, hey, let me go there and check it again. Instead of asking my friend, hey, do you think I really locked the door? I'm not so sure if I did. And instead of going there and locking it again and again and again and again, I would say to my OCD, maybe I locked, maybe I didn't. And then OCD would say, yeah, but if you didn't, maybe somebody could go and rob your house. And then I would say to OCD, maybe they will, maybe they won't. So friends, I had to let go of the need for certainty, and I had to embrace uncertainty. Embrace uncertainty. Accept that most things in life are outside our control. You don't have the control that you believe you have. Control often is nothing more than an illusion that we have, that we attach it to. Friends, we will never fully know how things gonna go, and we've gotta be okay with it, because not being okay with it is what makes us act on that compulsion. And the second thing, and the last thing on today's episode that was so important for me to understand and address, was that I did not want to feel any uncomfortability. I didn't want to feel sad. I didn't want to feel uncomfortable. I didn't want to feel anxious. And the problem is, those feelings cannot be avoided. One day my parents will die. One day friends will die. One day I might lose my job. One day things can happen. Life throws stones at us, and we've got to be learning how to be comfortable being uncomfortable. So I had to accept that anxiety is a part of life. That in fact, anxiety can be helpful at times because it can serve as an alarm bell to things that are going on wrong in our lives. So instead of trying to numb anxiety, instead of acting on compulsions just to make the anxiety go away, I had to learn how to embrace anxiety. And I remember the first time that my therapist told me, he said, Raff, when you feel anxious, he said, act as if. Tell your anxiety, hey anxiety, I love this feeling, man. This is so good. Come and stay for as long as you want. Today we're going to dance together. And listen, I know it sounds crazy. I know when my therapist told me that, I was like, this guy is an idiot. But reality is he was right. Anxiety and OCD is like an angry dog that can smell your fear. And the more it smells your fear, the more it's going to attack you, the more it's going to bite you. So friends, we have to act as if. When the thoughts come and we are desperate to figure it out, we say, maybe, maybe not. When anxiety hits you, instead of being scared of anxiety and trying to run away from it, embrace it. Accept anxiety. So friends, two lessons of today's episode. Anxiety is a part of life. Stop trying to push it away. Intrusive thoughts happens to OCD people and non-OCD people. The problem is not the thoughts themselves. The problem is how you and I address it. The problem is how you and I cope with it. That's what makes OCD worse. So the real problem behind OCD for this guy here was his control issues, his desperate need to be certain about everything, and his unwillingness to accept life's difficulties. So friends, embrace life as it is. We cannot live in a bubble of safety and certainty because that does not exist. If you understand that and you accept that, and you look for an OCD specialist and a therapist or a recovery coach who is certified and can help you through it, and you go through the exposure and response prevention methods, your life will be returned to normality. You're going to find the happiness, the joy, and the freedom that you deserve. Bless you guys.